taking all the data in isolation, you won't get the full picture. To understand the context and then the user, the product, and get all the data you can find that you need for your analysis. And then when you triangulate all those data, it is crystal clear what you have to do.
Welcome to the CX Equation, a podcast by TAP CXM.
We share actionable insights and real-world case studies to equip you with the tools you need to drive loyalty, engagement, and sustainable growth.
We're your hosts, Chantelle Casey
and Mark Clydesdale.
On today's episode of the CX Equation, we're delighted to welcome Emmanuelle Savarit, an expert in user experience and user research. Emmanuelle is a senior research and strategy leader with more than 20 years of experience helping organizations turn digital data and AI capabilities into measurable business value. Having led research and insights at organizations including the London Stock Exchange Group, she now leads global user research at one of the world's largest food delivery platforms. In today's conversation, we'll explore how user research drives real business impact, how AI and automation are reshaping research and decision-making, and how organizations can embed insight into everyday ways of working to drive loyalty, engagement, and sustainable growth. Welcome to the podcast, Emmanuelle.
Well, hi, very nice to be here, and thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. It's great to have you on. So I start, Emmanuelle, you've had an extensive career across user experience and user research. What is it that drew you into user research in the first place?
I'm an academic by background, so I was working in academia. I've got a PhD in psychology and in human interaction. Back then, we were not using technology that much, but we were doing a lot of work into how people interact with objects. And we started doing some work on visual stuff, which were very, innovative at that time, and how people interact with technology. So very quickly, I decided to see why it's not happening in the industry, because it's very important in the academic environment. It can be limited and slow sometimes. So I thought it was quite good to move to the industry. So one day someone reached out to me and said, would you be interested to work with us and do the research? So I set up my company and I started being a contractor and doing what we used to call usability. But like I say, UX research is far more than usability. So it's where I started.
Nice. All these acronyms develop over time, don't they? They change all the time.
Yeah, before it was usability, then after it was user research, then UX research, product research, for anything AI research. So, the research still remains, so that's a good thing.
And how important do you see that research element in making sure companies deliver a great customer experience?
I think what is important with user research or customer research is that we put the user at the center of all our investigation. So when you build a product or if you offer a service, actually understanding the user need is fundamental and essential to actually build the right service of the right product. Many organizations in the past were building services or products, but they didn't take into consideration the user. And with the democratization of technology, I sound very old when I'm saying that, but before we didn't have a smartphone, before we didn't have computers, not everyone had a computer. You had one computer in the family if you were lucky. But then with this democratization, many people got their own laptop. Everyone more or less got a smartphone or a tablet. So we had to understand how those people which were not like scientific or people working in engineering, actually how they're going to interact with the device and software which are in those devices. So it was very important at that time of this digital transformation and, democratization of technology that we understood, the end user and to see how we can provide a product which is easy to use. This is very important.
Yeah, I guess as you say as well, as the technology is advancing so quickly, user needs are also advancing and constantly changing based on what they're able to do. So it's really
constant changing. Everything. And it's not only about the end user when you see the customer, but when we mean user, it can be any professional using a tool. It could be anyone in the back, who are using tools. So it's very important to understand how that fit with their work environment as well. It's customer because you generate revenue and it's people who are facing, the end product. But all the people in the chain and in the user journey also need to be able to interact with the product.
Absolutely. We've kind of alluded to the fact that you've worked across some pretty complex and highly regulated industries, which is quite different to the faster moving ones that you've done more recently, such as food delivery. How have you found working across the different types of cultures in those different types of companies?
I always get super excited to work in a new sector because it's where you can adapt your research method to the new environment. So when I worked at the London Stock Exchange on financial platform, actually the end user were traders, analysts, people working in corporate finance. So it's those people who are making very difficult decisions who could have a huge impact on the world economy. So we need to make sure we could provide the right data at the right time and the right tool for them to actually perform their job. So you have to spend a lot of time to know your users, understand what is their job, which tasks they are doing, and what is their environment. When you see someone with a 6 or 9 screen, how do they get the information they need? And they spend hours on trading floors. When I started I was working at Thomson Reuters, who were a financial platform as well. You had to spend time on the trading floor to see how it works and understanding your users. But it's not only about the complexities, really to have the context and understand the sector of activity.
I don't actually know how it works. So would you spend time on a trading floor, or would you have traders come in and help you design products, or are you taking requirements and kind of using your own problem-solving skills to come up with what the right finished product is on what's gone before?
All of those. So spending time on a trading floor is very important. It's all the discovery work and it's the contextual inquiries. And that is very important for understanding, the surrounding environment, what is, their habitat where they interact every day. They may complain about something or a new feature. So we may take that into consideration and to see how it fits with the overall product. And that is very important for the researcher to actually identify not only that the product is important for the end user, but how many users are actually going to use it. Because if you decide to build a new feature, you need to really understand the return on investment for the business, which is building it. And people tend to forget about, we can always develop many features, but where this feature actually is going to have a financial impact for the business.
You don't want too many features, right? Because then things become harder to navigate, or you introduce more chances of things going wrong.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also, it's very interesting to look at something which is very complex, like a trading floor and a trader. But also what is important when you look at people who are actually not very good with computers, because we still have some people, or it's not, they're not in front of their computer every day. And when I was working for the government for the skill funding agency, where they had all the apprentices, I spent time with the tailors, to try to see how they are working. And you realize there, on Savile Row, it was beautiful. They make some beautiful clothes and suits, and, the craft is amazing. But understanding, how it is there. And actually, you realize I had one very old computer, which was for the accountant, and all the rest, you had no devices except they had their smartphone. So when we were developing the digital service for the skill funding agency for them to find apprentices or to find a training provider to train their apprentices, we had to test it with them. So I used to come with my laptop, and then after I started coming with an iPad, and I came with a phone, and we were testing with them. So it was test, improve, and try to really understand their needs and if they can navigate through the process. So complexity is not always based on a complex environment. A simple user journey can be complex for someone who actually don't use those devices every day and use software every day.
So you can have businesses that might have tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of staff that you're designing for, or if it's customer facing, millions and millions of customers. I suppose, how do you do user research at that scale and make sure that the user research is suitable for what's needed to help inform those businesses?
But what is important is to understand when we talk about minimal viable product, okay, so we try to do a simple journey. So that is the core of the product, and that you need to have everyone to be able to use it. Look at the commonality across all your customer or the end users, and then you can start building something. And then you can start adding feature based on the number of people who are going to use it. And then, so you can incrementally start to increase the features that you're going to put. So you prioritize or what is the most important and fundamental features of an end-to-end journey, which is going to be needed for the user. And then after you can incrementally increase and you do your research. You work very closely with market research, with data analytics, with people working in business intelligence to actually make those call of where you focus your attention. Because you can't do everything. And in most organizations, researchers are not the bigger teams in general. So they have to really prioritize where they will add more value to the business. So that's always try to find the right balance. If you look at, for example, the GDS and the gov.uk, they had one researcher for every project.
Wow. Okay.
So, but they were super agile. So it was really everyone working together, decided what was needed, and also we had all the ceremony in the morning, and we may have found something in the research, so we can very quickly say this is what's happening, and it's what we need maybe to change or adapt. But keeping in mind a government platform or service, the whole population needs to be able to use it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, because we all need to register, get your driving license, renew your driving license, apply for benefits, pay your taxes. You've got so much pension, everything. So you really need to make sure that it's usable for everybody.
I've just had to apply for my visa to travel to India. I'm about to go on holiday, and I'm pretty sure the Indian government didn't do any user research on that platform because it wasn't a very good experience.
Well, the UK one is the best in the world. People, the reputation, and we spend a lot of time when I start working. I worked on several exemplars when I had my agency.
I guess within that, then, from my own curiosity, are you also? So you mentioned a few examples there, like people applying for pensions, people applying for driving licenses. You get different types of profiles within those user journeys, right? So then you also, for instance, if people are applying for pensions, they're going to have a very different profile than someone that, a 17-year-old that's applying for a driving license. Are you tailoring the different sort of...
But the service needs to be usable for everybody. So that's the main thing. One day you may not need to apply for a driving license or renew your driving license, but maybe one day you will. So all the services look very similar. And the process, and I think they've got an amazing design system so they can replicate things which are working well.
So on that, it's just recently you've worked in some pretty big businesses with millions of customers. So we're talking about like the consumer facing side now. Why is strong user research so important in a fast moving business like the food delivery platform that you work for? And is there anything that tends to go wrong when companies skip the user research part of it?
So it's important because you've got so many different types of users, and what you want is to make sure that their experience is smooth. You make sure that the people stay on the marketplace. If you look at Amazon, it's the same thing. You want to make sure that people stay on the platform and keep actually purchasing on the platform. And you've got so many different things and different suppliers and different partners in it. And it's a very complex environment. So research is very important to make sure that everything is aligned and there won't be any gaps and any drop at any point in the user journey. So this is very important to have researcher to limit the risk. And I do think that research in digital world is really to limit the risk. It's good, of course, it's good to understand what you want to do if you want to create a new product, to understand what could be, the needs for the user for those, and to create the right digital product for it. But the main thing is to limit the risk and to make sure people stay on the marketplace and keep, buying. That's the purpose of a marketplace, no?
Do you ever find any resistance, not necessarily resistance, but companies who don't necessarily think that the research is the most important step? They might have done it before and think they can design something quite effectively without the research.
Oh, many. Yeah, in my career, I work in so many organizations, and some organizations, they don't see the value of research, and they don't see why it is important. Oh, we know our users, we know how to use the platform, we know what to design, we know. Yes, they all know. Of course, you've got a good intuition, but the main thing is you need to explain and show them. I think by showing your stakeholders the benefit of doing research is very important. When they see the value, they will keep asking you to do the research.
Have you seen people fall into some traps by not doing the research?
Some organizations got greater appetite to risk, so they won't do the research. And good for them, and if it works, amazing. Yeah, that's great. Other company, they've got less appetite for risk, and they want to make sure when they build something, it's going to work properly. And sometimes you do research when you have something not working, and you want to understand the why. And we're here, so research is not only doing usability testing; it could be so many things. And we put the data together. And why I always say that UX research is so powerful and it's a powerhouse, like I mentioned in my book, is we've got the context of the user. So we can bring all the data and we can triangulate all the data that we've got. But the fact that we've got the context, our interpretation of the data is going to be so spot on. Because taking all the data in isolation, you won't get the full picture. So to understand the context and then, the user, the product, and get all the data you can find that you need for your analysis. And then when you triangulate all those data, it is crystal clear what you have to do. And that's when you bring that to stakeholder, when they understand this power, they will say every time they need make a decision, they will come to me and say, okay, do we have data about this? Do we have data about that? What is your take on this? And then maybe we've got the data, or we already done some work previously, or we just gather and put things together and just try to help them to make the best call.
So just on that then, you spoke a little bit there about using your research to make decisions, to make business decisions. What does it actually take sort of day to day to make it part of everyday ways of working, rather than just something that teams it's an afterthought? Teams go, oh, hang on a minute, we've got this user research team we can go to. I imagine there's some embedding in the culture and sort of the ways of working that people.
Like any organization, the culture is very important. And on my first book, Practical User Research, published in 2020, I mentioned the UX research maturity. And there is different level of maturity. And most of the time when I arrive in an organization, it's maturity level 1 or level 2. And to reach the top of the maturity, it takes time. You need to make sure people understand and see really the value. And when I talk about return on investment, speak the language of the business. If you speak the language of the business, they're going to listen to you. And you need to be straight to the point. Understand the business, understand what people want and need in the business, what is in there giving them headache, and how we can help them. And that's our job as researcher, to actually provide data so they can make best decision. It's building relationship. One step at the time, you modify the way how people perceive research. Some people got great research team, but it doesn't have a seat at the table. So at the need to change a little bit the approach on how actually they talk about research and be very business-like and to talk the business language. And I find that once I managed to speak the business language, and then once I realized that I needed to know what the business, my stakeholder wanted, what was their headache every day, where can I help them? I always try to support them.
Are there other teams as well that you can work with that really help you make your point? I'm thinking analytics teams. If you can back up the kind of the research side and what people are saying with the data of what they're doing, is that then create an even more powerful story?
We use every data available. So data analytics, it's our best friend. Marketing, it's our best friend. Business intelligence is our best friend. And you can go to the commercial team, but we can get financial data and we can link it to it. So if you got all those functions, they have to work together. They can't work in silo. I've been working with market research for a long time, and the relationship never been amazing. It's always a bit like territorial because we overlap on a few things. But over the years, I really improved the relationship, and I worked very, very hard to build this relationship with the market research internally. And it changed the game completely. So spending a lot of time to speak with design, we know design is going to embrace a research. Product is going to embrace it. So spend your time with a marketing team, with the data analytics, with the data scientists. Help them as well to design, for example, for the data scientists, help them to design their experiment, because we know what we could do, and we can bring some of the insight we've got. So when we put all the insight together, all the data, quant, qual from any department, you can really build a very strong case, and the researcher should be able to triangulate and see something coming up of the data.
Yeah. Many, many years ago, I worked at Morrison Supermarkets, and I know there was a feeling in some senior people that if you asked customers what they thought, they didn't always kind of tell you the truth. They'd say one thing, but they would then do something else. Actually, when we were able to take data about who was buying what and what stores, and then add what customers were saying and put ethnography and other kind of research on top of that, you could all of a sudden come up with a much better story and help people understand what was working well, but also then get into the why it was working, which EPOS data and sales data doesn't always tell you the why, it just kind of tells you the what. And then when you combine those two things together, you had something really powerful.
It's not about what they say, it's what they do.
Yeah.
And what we're interested is not what they say, it's about what they do and what they need to do what we want them to do. We tend to forget about that. There's a lot of user need. Yes, the user need to do something. If the user need related to the business need. So you try to get both together and you find the right balance between the two, and where they meet is what you need to build.
Is that ever a friction, matching the user need to the business need? Can they sometimes be out of sync?
But this is one thing which I'm always doing. It seems to work, apparently.
Once you've got, so you spoke loads about the insight there and working with different teams to sort of get the whole story. Once you've got the insight, what helps teams move from insight to action? So what are you doing off the back of collecting all of that data?
Because most of the time we are not embedded in a team. We tend to be more centralized. Not always, but there is always less researchers and product design, data analysts, so we are always outnumbered. So it's really to build a relationship with the people who actually want the research, to make sure they are going to be following what's happening, is to build a good relationship with them, to make sure we are their opinion when we start designing research. It's to make sure we align. Alignment is fundamental. So when you've got this alignment, and once you've got also this good relationship, they are waiting for you to do the research, to take some action. So automatically, they should implement the findings. Maybe not all of them, but the ones which are important to them. In many occasions, I notice that people do the research. Different product teams ask for research, and people do the research. Actually, my first question is, why do you want the research? What will be the benefits for the business? So we prioritize based on the business needs. And if they align with the business needs, automatically it's going to be picked up to be implemented. If you do something which is not part of the roadmap of the business, why the business is going to change their roadmap to implement something which was not in their radar? Unless if it's something which is emerging from the data that you didn't expect and has a huge impact, then we can say, okay, listen a minute, we identify that in a research. this could have a massive impact, positive or negative, whatever. We want to present you the finding, and it may help you with your decision making. So it's very different. But picking a project which no one is going to implement, you can anticipate. Ask them, do you have budget? With a sponsor? You have those questions. So then you don't waste your time, upfront. Upfront, you just ask all that. If they've got no budget, if they got no sponsor at C-level, we don't do it.
Okay.
I'm very ruthless like this.
Yeah,
for the
no, as you
prioritization.
should be.
So people are waiting, and people are really waiting to actually, for us to say, yes, we're going to pick up your project.
Yeah, you've got limited bandwidth, right? You need to spend your time where you're going to actually drive the most impact.
And we need to also show a return on investment and impact.
Yep.
Because doing research with zero impact or very little impact is not going to be doing any good for the research team. So I need to think about, my team is only going to do things which are going to be impactful. So we get a good visibility, so we got more credibility, so it's better, so research is at a better position within the organization. Managing a big research team, it's not just saying, oh, you do this, you do that. No, it's thinking strategically of what you are taking, which people you are speaking with, how do you support people which you think it's important, how to say no to people when they want something but you can't do it for them. It's just managing all those things at the same time and understanding the business priorities.
Hopefully a link then from bandwidth and return on investment. AI is obviously transforming how businesses are operating. How is AI changing the role of user research?
Oh my God, it's great. People are worried about AI. I understand, because they think it's going to take their job. And okay, so I rewind a little bit. So when I was in IC and I was doing the research myself. When we were doing field work, we had to carry cameras, which were heavy, tripods, tapes. Now you're on the cloud, but we used to have external hard drive because the computer couldn't take anything. We had to go back through the video and transcribe ourselves manually to see the pattern and do the analysis, to do the thematic analysis within the data. To extract a clip, my God, that was just a nightmare, And then to put a subtitle, at first we couldn't, but then when we start putting subtitle, that was another nightmare. So for all that, my God, now you just do a session, it's recorded, you got the transcription, you've got you want your clip, you can pick it up, you can change it. It's amazing. So people don't realize that how AI is changing the life of the researcher, where we were spending hours to do that. For the analysis, getting information, access to some data, communication, it's much easier, getting data from someone else. We can do a prompt and we get the data, so it's much better. So I think for the processes, it's good. When you write an email, you can have it proofread. When you write your report, I'm French and I've been in the UK for 30 years. So I always needed someone to proofread my slides because, of course, from time to time, I had some spelling mistakes, okay? Now, thank you to Gemini. It's just like you don't have to, I use Grammarly a lot. So I've been using Grammarly since 2015, 2016 when it came out, I think. So those things change our life.
And that gives you the chance to speak to more people, or the ability to present your findings in a more compelling way? Like what's the then benefit that the time you've saved on the clipping and the subtitling and all of that? Or where can you spend that time doing more stuff?
But we can do more projects, for sure. So you can increase by 30-40% your effectiveness, definitely, by using AI in research. So you can do more research to have more impact. The other thing as well is with AI is sometimes people are overusing AI in research. You still need to be in control of your analysis and in control of your data and in control of your interpretation. And people may just say, okay, let's put this there and we get all the results. I think you still need human judgment, and human oversight. This is very important. And it's depending on the type of research you are doing. If it's pure usability, you can use a AI moderator. That's fine. I don't think, or unmoderated session, that's fine. But when it's something extremely strategic, I will not put everything on AI, to be honest. I will use AI to improve my workflow and to be faster and to be more efficient. But I will keep the judgment of all the interpretation of the data, because AI and the AI system, they are built by human with bias. Using AI tools to do your analysis and provide insight sometimes can be backward instead of being forward-looking. And if you want to be innovative, I think you need to look forward and look at what you don't know, rather than to just reinforce what you already know.
Are there any governance frameworks that you've seen that are working really well?
What do AI models?
Yeah, they're making sure that AI is being used responsibly, and that the quality of the data is being checked, and that we are doing things the way that we're supposed to be doing them.
Well, normally in terms of there's the effectiveness, which is normally they are effective. They do the job, the models. They are very well built, and people are very talented, and actually the engineers are building very good algorithms, so that's fine. I think they train the data. And I think it's probably where we need to have people to actually help with the ethical aspect when they train the data, when they train the model. I think that at that time, it's important to have maybe a committee to make sure everything is ticking the box. But things, we play by ears at the moment. It's still quite early on.
It's all moving very quickly, isn't it? How is it going to be a couple of years before we can trust it a bit more and you can have more unmoderated sessions? Or do you think we all need to be very cautious for the next sort of decade or so as to how much we're letting the AI do versus the human oversight?
I think we can trust some of the model if you know exactly what to expect from them and how they're working. So for a researcher, what is important is to understand if they're using any AI system. It's to understand how they work. And if there is any question related to ethics, regulation, fairness, diversity, bias, they should raise it to the supplier who actually provide this product. And if you build it in-house, I think you need to work with the compliance team, you need to work with the engineer. So it's a multidisciplinary effort. And it can't just come from engineering. There, we want to do that. We train it. We get the data. We do it. I think they need to get more people with different expertise to step in at the time when they plan to do it. It's to be responsible. You don't want to start building something and then you're having to cross the line. And if you operate in the EU, you have to shut down your AI. I can't remember which company had an AI model and they had to switch it off, because it broke the European law, and there were some big issues about data protection. Because not only you have to comply to the AI Act, but you have to comply with all the other regulation. So GDPR, all those things need to be included.
Just on that, then, how do we maintain customer trust in a world where, as a consumer, I'm always I think there's this feeling that you're aware when a robot is talking to you, when it's AI, right? How do you balance innovation with maintaining your customer trust so that you're not breaking it either from a regulation perspective or just from a customer relationship perspective?
Actually, every time you use an AI tool, the user needs to know about it. That's the law. So that you have to make sure they know there is an AI tool behind it. Building trust, that is going to be the issue. And that's why I think research is going to be very important. Customer research and user research is going to be very important to actually understand where we stand in terms of the trust with the end user. I don't know if people will do it internally for internal tools, but for external tools, customer facing outside the organization, it could be B2B. They will have to build trust. And I think research will need to provide those informations. AI transformation. Actually, I wrote a chapter in my book I was about to send it for to be proofread and all that. And I said, I need to write this chapter very quickly. One day I just said, I need to do it. So there is a lot of similarities between digital transformation and AI transformation or in AI integration. And what I found very interesting is when I did some work, I can't remember, I think it was with a land registry, so government work. And they were integrating a payment, okay? But the UK government, you follow exactly the same screen, they all look like. And when we were doing the payment, it went to another screen from another provider. They lost the trust straight away. So it was urgent to put the screen before, the payment system to put and now you see very often when you do government payment, you see the same screen than the rest of your screens. So, it's like you get the trust. I think communication will be very important from the companies to actually communicate and be very clear about their commitment to responsible AI. To build trust. That brand will be very important. If it's a trusted brand, is a trust the brand, I think they will probably trust the AI integration in the brand. So it'll be a lot of, it's not coming in one place. And make sure that actually nothing is going wrong. Because if something is going wrong, I tell you, it will be in the press in no time and lawsuit will follow. So, I think for getting people to trust, they will have to do a lot of work. What is important? What do people need to trust AI when using a product?
Great. Well, thank you for telling us all about AI and user research. We've got a few closing questions now to sort of wrap it up and summarize what we've spoken about. So if you could give one quick piece of advice to organizations who are trying to embed research and insight into the culture, what would you tell them to focus on first?
Get a strong researcher to start with, who can actually start doing the right stuff. Someone with already built, created teams, have impact, had trace record of research can bring success story.
I find there are certain roles in this world that don't always get the credit that they're due. Project managers, business analysts, right? People think it's a bit of organization, a bit of common sense sometimes, and it's not. It's a proper, it's a profession, it's a skill set, it's a set of experience. It's very, very difficult for anyone to just try and pick up. And I assume research is the same. There is a process, there's a way of doing it, there's a way of interpreting it, and all of that. So having someone with that experience can be hugely valuable.
And there is different skill sets within research. You can go from the anthropologist to the data scientist. So, and all the other skill set in the middle. So when you hire, depending where you are in your organization, growth of the business, what you want to achieve and which type of profile you are looking for. Because maybe currently it's usability testing you want to do, get someone which is going to do usability testing. If it's someone to actually bring something which is going to help decision-making at C-level, bring someone with a bit of gravitas and understanding and strategic background, because it takes time to build this knowledge and
Absolutely,
to understand and to build a strategic lens, to think business, to think, it's like all those different things. So you're a bit like a conductor in an orchestra and try to understand everything. Mentally, it's exhausting.
We ask all of our guests, I don't know if you listened to the podcast previously, we ask all of our guests the same question to finish, which is there anyone that you can think of that's kind of been the greatest professional influence on your career? There might be multiple, but any people that really stand out as having influenced you?
So for me, very difficult, because when I started, you didn't have researchers, UX research, it didn't exist. So I will tell you, the person who influenced me the most is my mentor when I was an academic researcher. His name is Charles Goodwin. He did a lot of work in filming people in interaction, and he did research in cockpit interaction. He worked for Xerox as a consultant. He did he loved doing work in a workplace. He did some research in a oceanographic ship, and he was filming people interacting. It was incredible, and it's really, for me, I owe him everything I know, honestly. And his wife, Candy, Marjorie Goodwin, which was an anthropologist. He was applied linguistic and a semiologist, and she was, and she's still an anthropologist, and at UCLA in California. So when I was there, they told me so much, and I would never be who I am today without all the things they share with me.
You mentioned your first book earlier in the podcast. Do you just want to tell us about the books you've written?
I wrote 2 books. So the first one, is called Practical User Research, which is very practical. I wrote it almost 6 years ago now. And actually, if you don't have a researcher in your team and you want to do some research, this will help you to how to. It's a basis of, everything you need to know to integrate user research to your product development. So it's highly inspired from all the work I've done in the government and the process and to be agile. My daughter, which is product manager, and in many occasions when she was working, she didn't have research. She said she'd been using a lot of stuff from my book. So apparently it works, especially coming from my daughter,
Harsh critic, yes.
And the second book, which is the first volume because I'm preparing the second one at the moment, which is a UX Research Powerhouse. And it's the foundation of strategic UX research leadership. So that's volume 1. A lot of stuff about different work stream, tactical, strategic, about how to collaborate with engineering, with design, with data and marketing, and etc. And a lot of things. And there is also something about the first 365 days as a leader. So when you come in an organization, the whole year, what you need to do and how to face it. So, and there is a chapter on AI.
And you say you have your own podcast?
Yes, it's the UX Research Club, 25 episodes on UX Research Club in English version.
Brilliant.
We'll give it a listen.
Well, thank you for joining us, Emmanuelle. It's been a great chat, and it's been lovely to have you on. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to have time to talk about this field, which is amazing, UX research. So always love talking about it.
Right.
Great. Thank you.
Really enjoyed that conversation with Emmanuelle. Got some good insight there about the world of user research.
Yeah, obviously a guest that's extremely experienced in her field. We mentioned a couple of books during the podcast. We'll include those in the show notes and a link to her podcast as well. So I hope you enjoyed listening to her as much as we enjoyed interviewing her, and keep an eye out next month for our next exciting guest.
Speak to you next month.
The CX Equation is brought to you by TapCXM. To find out more about what we do and how we can help you, visit tapcxm.com.
And then make sure to search for the CX Equation in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you usually find your podcasts. Make sure to click subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.
On behalf of the team here at TapCXM, thank you for listening.